Hello class, welcome to part 2 of section 2.3. We're going to continue on with our word problems. And the first one we're coming to is talking about revenue. So in Fortune 500 list for 2009 were ExxonMobil and Walmart. These were the top two. Say revenue together. Okay, so revenue together. So when you see that word revenue together is telling me that I'm adding something. And it's totaling, or totaled, 848.5 billion. So it totaled 848.5 billion. Okay, so now let's figure out what the two things we're adding. Well, it's talking about two Fortune 500 companies. One of them is Exxon and one of them is Walmart. So I'm taking the revenue from Exxon plus the revenue from Walmart, and it should equal that total of 848.5 billion. Again, we run into this issue. We have two variables. So let's figure out what we need to do to try to convert one of those variables over. So it says Walmart's revenue were 37.3 billion less than Exxon. Okay, so that's telling me, let me go ahead and move this over a little bit so we have some room. So what that statement is telling me is Walmart's revenue, so Walmart's revenue were 37.3 billion less than Exxon. So 37.3 less than the Exxon. Okay, so that tells me that I can replace W with Exxon minus 37.3. So let's go ahead and drop that in for Walmart, and that's going to get us to one variable. So we have E plus, and now instead of Walmart, we're going to plug in E minus 37.3. And it equals the 848.5 billion. Okay, so you can see how I've replaced the Walmart revenue, which it was told that was 37 billion less than the Exxon. Okay. So now it's combining like terms. So we have 2e, so we have 1e plus 1e, minus 37.3 equals 848.5. So we have a minus here, so we're going to go ahead and add that over. 37.3, so add 37.3. And that gives me 2e equals, make sure you line the decimals up. So we have an 8 here, 15, carry the 1, so 7, 8, 8. Right. And if you wanted to go ahead and use a little calculator, you could. And we have 848.5 plus the 37.3, 885.8. Okay, look, feeling good about it so far. Next step is to divide by 2. So we divide by 2. And that should give me the Exxon revenue. So let's go ahead and go back to our calculator. And we're going to take this answer that we had, divide it by 2. And that gives us 442.9. Okay. 442.9, and that's billion that we're working with. So that's Exxon's. Now let's see what it's asking for. It wants to know what were the revenues of each. Okay, so we need both. We have the Exxon, so all we need to do is plug that number in, and that should give us Walmart. So Walmart equals 442.9, or exons, minus 37.3. Okay, so let's get our calculator out. So we're going to take this number and we are going to subtract 37.3, and that's going to give us the Walmart, which is 405.6. And this is billion. Okay. So again, it involves setting up the equation, identifying we have two variables. So let's figure out, it's got to tell us what one of those variables equals. And it told us how to get rid of W and replace it with E. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, our next problem deals with sales tax and figuring out how to look at the end result and figure out what the original price was. So we have that the total cash register receipts at the motel where he works amounted to $2,725. So that was a total. So let's go ahead and write that down. So total means we're equaling something. Okay, so this included this 9% sales tax charge. Find the amount of tax. Okay, so when we buy something, remember it's going to be the original price plus however much sales tax there is. So to write that, our original price for the value, unknown. We don't know how much was originally sold. But we do know that whatever was sold had a 9% sales tax on it. So after the original price, we're going to add the tax. And to determine tax, you take the interest or the tax rate, which is 9%, and we're going to multiply it by the original price of what we're working with. So the original price plus 9% of that will give us the total. Okay. Well, this has a 1 in front of it. This is a 1x. We combine like terms, so we have 1.09x equals 2,725. To find our x, we're going to undo multiplication with division. So we're dividing by 1.09. Sorry, it sort of looks like there's a decimal there. That's not supposed to be a decimal place. And we get x equals, and let's go ahead and divide this. So we have our handy calculator. 2725 divided by 1.09. Okay. So that tells us x equals 2,500. Now let's think about what x was. X was the original price of what we were working with. We want to know what is the sales tax. So the sales tax is the original price plus 0.09x. So you have a couple different ways of finding this. We can look at 0.09 times 2,500. That would tell us how much sales tax. Or we can find the difference between the total and the price of the original item. So I'm just going to subtract these two. And that gives us 225. This ends up being our sales tax. Or you could take 0.09 times 2,500, and that would give us the sales tax as well. So there's a couple different ways to figure that one out. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the next one. So again, you're welcome to pause me so that you can write down the problem and work your way through. But we'll we'll go ahead and get started with it, and then if you do need to go back, you can always rewind as well if you didn't pause me. Okay, so Jennifer invested some money at 4.5% simple interest and 1,000 less than twice this amount at 3%. Her total annual income from the interest was 1,020. How much was invested at each rate? Okay, so the first thing we want to do is look at what type of investments are we making. We're making a 4.5 and a 3%. So that's going to go in our box. So notice how I have this box set up. So let's look at the rate. We have 4.5%. Well, we want to convert that to a decimal when we're working any of these. So you slide your decimal over twice. That gives me 0.045. So you want to convert your percentages to decimals. The other interest that we're dealing with is 3%. So again, move your decimal twice, so that gives me 0.03. Now we want to figure out how much is invested in each. Well, invested some money at 4.5%. Doesn't tell us how much, it just says some money. That's an unknown amount, so I'm going to call that my variable, or x. The other one is simple interest, say in 1,000 less than twice this amount. So 1,000 less than twice that unknown amount. Okay. So we don't know the amount of either one. We just know that the second one here is 1,000 less than twice the other one. Now, to figure out how much interest is earned after 1 year, we have the amount invested times the rate should equal the interest. So we have x times the rate, so 0.045 times x. So I'm multiplying those two together. We could write it as x times 0.045, but the habit is to write it in back. In our second one, we're going to have 3%, so 0.03 times this value. Now notice that we have two terms, so when we write the multiplication, we want to include that in parentheses. So we have 2x minus 1,000. Okay, so we have a little more information. We know that the total interest, so notice that we have interest over here, is 1,020. So the total means I'm going to add what I made from both. That's a plus sign, and it should equal a total of 1,020. Okay, so let's go ahead and write our equation. So we're going to take the interest from the first one, which is 0.045x. We're going to add it with the interest of the second one, 0.03 times 2x minus 1,000, and it should equal a total of 1,020. So we've taken the interest from both, we've added them, and it should equal that 1,020. From here, it's combining like terms and working our way through. So let's go ahead and do that. So you have distribute the 0.03 in, so you may need your calculator on this one. We have the 0.045x plus, when we multiply that, we have 0.03 times 2 equals 0.06x, and then we take 0.03 times 1,000, and it's a 30, equals 1020. Okay, so we've just distributed the 0.03 into the parentheses. Combine like terms. So we're going to combine those. So we have 0.045 plus 0.06, and that gives us 0.105x. I'm going to add the 30 over. We didn't use the color we've been using, so let's use red. So let's add 30 over. And that gives me 1050. You can go ahead and use your calculator if you want. And then we're almost done. Divide by 0.105. Divide by 0.105. And we have 1050 divided by 0.105. And that equals 10,000. So x equals 10,000. And we'll go back and check to see what is being asked for. How much was invested at each rate? Okay. Well, we have that it was 10,000 at x. I needed an extra 0 there. So we have $10,000 invested at x. Well, notice that x is dealing with the rate of 4.5. So 10,000 at 4.5% is one of our answers. To find the other one, we're going to plug in x here, and that will give us the amount invested at 3,000. So we have 2 times 10,000 minus 1,000. So we have 20,000 minus 1,000, and that gives us 19,000. This is dollars, and this is at 3%. So make sure you go back, check what it's actually looking for, and it was looking for the amount invested at both. So you'll want to find the answer for both of those. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at another one. Again, if I went too fast, you can pause and go back. Okay, let's look at one more problem that is similar to the one we just worked on. So notice I have a little table set up for this one. In this one, we're mixing different solutions, and we want to know what the end result is. So what we're talking about is we have a problem with number of liters, percent, and liters of pure acid. So to get the liters of pure acid, we multiply these two together. So we're going to go through and list what we have for each of them, multiply them together, and that will help us set up our equation. So let's start with what our first statement says. It says we have 12 liters of 12% alcohol solution. Okay, so I have 12%, which converts to 0.12, and I have 12 liters. So that's my first statement. My next one says must be mixed with a 20% solution. So my next one is 20%, and it's 0.2. Now it doesn't tell us how much of the 20%, and if you continue reading, notice that it's asking how much 20% is, so that's a variable. The last one is what we're going to end up with. So we want to get a solution of 14%. So we're going to take these two and add them together, and we want the end to be a 14%, which is 0.14. Now, if if I told you we added 12 liters plus 5 liters, you would tell me that 12 plus 5 gives me 17 liters of the end result. Well, we don't know how much of 20% is. We do know how much we have at 12%. So what ends up happening is the total number is 12 liters from the first one, plus however much we have in the second one. Now we go ahead and multiply these together. So this gives me 12 times 0.12. That will give me the amount of pure acid in the first one. Pure alcohol, sorry. In the second one, again, we multiply and we have 0.2 times x. We don't know how many liters of the 20%. And the third one, we're going to take 0.14 times the 12 plus x. So what we're dealing with is we're going to take the first two, add them together, and it should equal the bottom one. So we have 12 times 0.12 plus 0.2x should equal 0.14 times 12 plus x. So we've taken the first one plus the second one, and it should equal the third one. So let's go ahead and get our calculator out and multiply these out. So we have 12 times 0.12, and that's going to give me 1.44 plus 0.2x equals, distribute in, and we have 0.14 times 12 equals 1.68 plus 0.14x. Now we go ahead and move things to the correct side of the equal sign. I'm going to subtract over the 1.44, so minus 1.44, and that's going to give me 0.24, and then we'll subtract over the 0.14x minus 0.14x, and we get, remember to add your 0, we get 0.06x, and then divide by 0.06, and we get x equals, it can be a little hard to see here, but we'll go into the calculator, but really it's like taking 24 and dividing it by 6, so we'll take it and divide it out, and that gives us 4. So let's see what we're looking for. How many liters of 20% solution are needed? Well, 20% was represented by just the x, so that's telling us that we need 4 liters. So I hope that helped you solve some of the word problems from section 2.3. If you have any questions, let me know.